So that was a moment that really took me down that rabbit hole of loneliness, of no self respect, low self esteem. A lot of people like myself, it takes a lifetime
Hmm.
to heal,
Yeah.
finally heal, and keep on healing because the healing never ends.
Welcome to the Journey Podcast, where we share some of the most inspiring stories on the planet, life lessons, and tools that will help you navigate through your own personal journey. I am your host, Josh Valentine.
Welcome to the Journey Podcast, where we showcase some of the most inspiring stories from around the world. Today, I have the honor and privilege of interviewing someone who is near and dear to my heart, someone that I have a lot of love, respect, and admiration for. She is not only an author, as you can see her book right here. She is a massage therapist. She does canine massage therapy, which is absolutely incredible. The only person that I know of that does this line of work, but I would say on top of that, her work as a speaker, her work as a holistic coach, more than anything, she's a modern day healer in my eyes. She is absolutely a blessing, very gifted individual, and she has an incredible story. So without further ado, I have the one and only Miss Blanca Rodriguez. I don't know if I should go with the missus. I know you have a wonderful husband as well, but
Thank you.
I am so happy to have you here. And there's just so much that we can unpack here.
Thank you
So,
so much
yeah,
for having me. It's an honor for me to be here. Thank you so much for your words.
definitely. So, Blanca, where do we start? Your story is very expansive. And I know a little bit because we've done many coaching sessions together over the years. You've tuned into a lot of my work with the Breakfast Club. I think that's how we originally met. And in terms of your story, I would love if you could just give the audience a little bit about what are you up to today? Like, what's your line of work? Before we even go into the backstory, what's your line of work today? What exactly do you do? Even with the work that you do with canine massage therapy, how does that all tie into what you have going on?
Well, my line of work is about helping people improve their quality of life. And it has been the rooting of all jobs that I have had in my life. I am a licensed massage therapist for almost 19 years. And thanks to massage therapy, I met animal massage therapy. And I've been an animal lover since I was a little kid. Animals have been so important in my life for so many reasons, and the good times and the not so good times. Animals are always there for us to comfort us and to make us company and give us unconditional love. So, with massage therapy, I love to help people. That is definitely my line of work. I love animals so much. And when I heard that animal massage therapy actually existed and there was a school in Florida, I said, I have to do
Wow,
this. It's part of my obligation to pay it back to these beautiful animals, at least a little bit for all the love that they give us.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have any animals yourself? Or were you a dog lover?
I'm a dog lover, and we lost our beloved a year and a half ago. We're taking a break because we are still healing from the loss. We still feeling it. The dog was my husband was her person.
Wow,
And it was a big blow for us because animals are not just animals, they're family.
absolutely.
And we lost a family member. I channel a lot working with dogs, volunteering for animal shelters, and helping abandoned, neglected, abused dogs to feel better, at least for that short time that I work on them. And you know what? The best part of volunteering with these shelters is that the animal is always willing to receive the treatment, always willing to receive the love, the attention that they so very much deserve. But no, right now we don't have an animal at home.
Wow.
Yeah, but it'll come later on.
Yeah,
I'm
of
sure.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. So at this stage, you've done a lot of people, you've done a lot of animals, right? Which do you prefer?
Animals.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why is that?
Because animals don't lie.
Mm,
They don't believe in second try. They either like something or they don't. It's easy like that. There's no, oh, come back later and let's see how this goes.
mhm.
Yes, I have had my some animal clients that it takes a little more time for them to get used to my touch and to my approach. But once that barrier is taken down, it's all unconditional love. And my favorite part is that they are such wonderful receivers. And when they are done with receiving the treatment, they just get up and leave.
Wow.
That was it. I love you. Bye.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Until
amazing.
next time. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's my animals are definitely my favorite part of massage. But and I love human massage therapy. That's what took me to canine massage in the first place. And I love to help people. And the best part is when there's some people that are troubled that have had surgeries or auto accidents and a pill is not enough for them
Mm.
and they meet massage therapy and they feel the relief. That is a win for me,
Wow.
helping others feel better.
Definitely.
Yeah.
How'd you get into the world of massage therapy? Was it something that you felt called to do, or was it something that you were just interested in? I know you've had other careers
Hmm.
as well, and I should have mentioned that you're also a dancer. You
Yes.
you have this incredible aspect of your life,
Thank you.
just expressing yourself artistically. But in terms of getting into the world of massage therapy, why did you choose that specific profession?
Well, before being a massage therapist, I wanted to be a physical therapist, actually. But
Mm,
in my life, I like to go straight to the point when I do some schooling. I tried going to college for a bachelor's degree, and that actually didn't work for me. And then I look at the curriculum for physical therapists, and I was like, that is just not a good idea. So, what is the next best thing? And I see a commercial on TV, massage therapy school. I was fresh, flown in. I moved to Florida from Puerto Rico. And I looked at that commercial and I said, that I'm going
wow.
back to school. Yeah. So I went back to school at 38 years old for massage therapy. Yes, yes. Later on in life. And I went back to school for massage therapy. And I said, this is the second best thing besides physical therapy. And actually, after graduating and getting certified and licensed, I end up at a physical therapy office and we work hand in hand. And honestly, I love massage therapy more than physical therapy.
I love that.
Yes,
I love that. That's
yes, yes.
amazing. So when did you come from Puerto Rico?
2003.
How old were if you don't mind? I know you're pretty
So I
open
was
about your age.
37 years old
Wow.
and I moved to Florida. Yes, back in 2003 with two little kids.
So
Uh,
you were living in Puerto Rico?
I was living in Puerto Rico. Well, I was born in New York, and at age 7, we moved to Puerto Rico, and then all along till 2003, all my schooling life was in Spanish. So my English actually comes from kindergarten and first grade in New York.
Wow.
That's where my English
Wow.
comes. So imagine how powerful our very young years are that it stays.
Of course. That's
And that information stayed because English as a second language in Puerto Rico, I mean, in schools, it was not. It was just first, second grade English all along,
wow.
all the way to high school. I don't know how it is now. I hope they improve.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow. So I have to ask you about life in Puerto Rico. And I'm not sure if you know, but I lived in Guayama when I was a young kid.
Mhm.
So just like you, born in New York pretty much, and then went to Puerto Rico. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother and went to school as a young boy. And it's interesting because I still have a lot of those memories about what it was like. And we lived pretty much in a village in a little village called Corazon in Guayama, and it was basically underneath just these mountains, and like I was just so blown away by how majestic the mountains were, and just the lifestyle, the people, how warm they were. But what was life like for you in Puerto Rico for all those years? Because you lived a lot of your adult life out there as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Guayama is a smaller town
Mm.
in the southern east part of the
Yeah.
island. I live in the metro area of San Juan
Mm.
all of those years. So it was busy. Always there was a lot of traffic, but it was wonderful because Puerto Rico is so beachy,
Mm.
but it's so mountainous at the same time. You know, you're at the beach and 5 minutes later you're in the mountain.
Yeah.
That's how close one to the other is. In general terms, I had a very fun childhood. There was always a party and a fiesta for everything
Mm.
in the island. I come from a very large family. From my father's side, it was like 20 cousins. And then
Wow.
from my mother's side, it was like 28 cousins. So when there was a family party, it was a
Yeah.
party, a huge party. And that part of my childhood and my upbringing was really, really good. It helped me through, I mean, that was the best help that I could have through very tough times in life. But at the same time, growing up in Puerto Rico can be very challenging because there's a lot of excess,
Mm.
there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of people, but there's a lot of excess. That
Yeah.
is for sure. And after my father died suddenly and tragically in New York, things definitely changed. It was like life before my father's death and life after my father's death,
Wow.
which it turned it to be a very, very rough road for
Absolutely.
many, many years to come because my mother got really, really trouble after my father's death. But in general terms, living in Puerto Rico, there is a lot of energy. There is Puerto Rico is Puerto Rico. The culture is beautiful, is rich. The people are welcoming, they're loving, but at the same time, it can get really excessive and really crazy.
Yeah.
The culture definitely has everything to do and how people are raised a certain way, and especially back in the days, you know, I'm 58 years old,
Yeah.
so back in the days it was a whole different mindset
Mm.
on how to raise kids, especially the girls
Hmm.
versus today. Today is a different ballgame, and I'm very happy for the changes.
Yeah.
It's
I can only
very much
imagine.
needed. Yeah.
For sure.
Hmm.
So, what line of work were you into before you started to get into massage therapy and all of this in Puerto Rico? What did you spend most of your time doing as an adult?
Well, as an adult, I did a lot of professional dancing. I was in dance, Latin salsa dance company, a ballroom dance company. I did many shows, and then after that, I gave it all up because of being silly and ignorant. And then I went off to be a secretary. I got a associate's degree in secretarial sciences.
Mm.
And since I was bilingual, I had many doors that opened for me and law offices, the hotel industry. And from the hotel industry, I started as the accounting department secretary. But then after that, I ended up being a banquets server
Wow.
because I made triple the money
Mm.
doing banquets
Of course.
rather than being a secretary.
Wow.
So that was basically my three biggest jobs that I had in Puerto Rico was that around secretarial, being a banquet server, and definitely dancing.
Wow. Such
Yeah.
an interesting, colorful background.
Very different one from the other.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So, what was your biggest reason for leaving a tropical paradise of Puerto Rico, right, and migrating to the United States? What would you say was the biggest thing that really led to that? Why would you leave such an incredible place and just your past life over there?
Well, I always knew that I would end up living in the United States again
Mm.
since I was very young.
Mm.
And then when I started getting into my more adult years, I was like, somehow I'm going to end up living in the US. I thought I will be going back to New York, but that was just not the
Mm.
plan that God had for me. I met the father of my children when I was in college,
Mm.
and we were dating on and off, kind of lightly. And then I wouldn't see him for years, and then back and forth. And one very fiery, passionate night, I got pregnant for my son. And then he was living here in Florida and he was asking me, come to Florida, come to
Mm,
Florida. There's better opportunities for you. There's better chances for you. And for that, I will be always grateful to him
wow.
because he was the one that kind of
Wow.
pushed me to make the right decision
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Of
at that time
course.
of and I was thinking to myself, well, am I gonna keep on being a secretary for the rest of my life,
Mm,
or am I gonna embark into something new? I knew that when I moved to Florida, I wanted to do something different. I
mm,
didn't want to be a server anymore. I didn't want to be a secretary anymore. I wanted to do something different. So I was living in a place that it started to become not the best place to be at.
mhm.
There was a lot of drugs in the playground where I would take my kids, and I was like, "No,
This is
this
in Florida?
this was in Puerto Rico."
In Puerto Rico.
Yeah, in Puerto Rico, and I said, "No, this is just not the environment that I want to raise my kids in." And the decision was basically made because of that. And I moved and I didn't look back.
Wow.
Definitely, yeah.
Wow.
It
Yeah.
was very difficult to move from Puerto Rico. I didn't know it will hit me that hard because I had my best friends there. I had help. My mother was
Mm,
helping me with the kids. And at that time, I was a single mother.
mm,
And when I moved to from Puerto Rico, it's like, what am I gonna do now?
wow.
But it worked out, thankfully. I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Wow.
Mm.
That's incredible. So what part of Florida did you go to?
I moved to Orlando
Mm,
the first year. Yeah, I moved to Orlando the first year and then moved a year later to Lake County, which is close to here, to Tampa. It's like an hour away. And I just took it from there. And then I said to myself, okay, I'm going to do something and I'm going back to school.
wow.
And that's when I look at that commercial for massage therapy and I said,
Wow.
that I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So your journey through motherhood,
Mm,
we have to obviously share that because a lot of our audience
mm,
are mothers. And what was that like for you? Just going from one environment to a completely new country, in a sense,
mhm,
of the United States, and just raising your kids and integrating that into work life and all of that, and even the relationship. I know you have an interesting story, even with your past
mhm,
relationship with your children's father. And this podcast, by the way, is never to demonize anyone specifically. We talk a lot about our past, about a lot of our relationships, our family, our friends, and it's more so to raise awareness
mm.
around the human condition. It's about raising awareness around generational cycles, trauma, these things that can ultimately help people on their path.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you have a really deep story
Mhm,
in terms of your children and their upbringing, and with your ex as well.
mhm.
And if you don't mind sharing just a little bit about what the motherhood journey was like for you, going from Puerto Rico to Florida and
Of
beyond.
course,
Yeah.
of course. Well, the first thing that happened, it was that I never planned to have kids.
Mm,
God chose that path for me, and I'm eternally grateful.
yeah.
I always say that I didn't give life to my kids gave life to me.
Mm,
Where I was emotionally at that time when I got pregnant for both of them, it was a roller coaster ride of very confusing
mm,
emotions. I was in an abusive relationship, emotionally and physically abusive relationship. It comes, of course, from my own trauma from my childhood and big losses, not understanding how to grieve,
mhm,
not having that support in my grief since I was a kid. I grieve on my own.
mhm,
I felt I was isolated. I was I'm the youngest of three brothers and sisters, and just because I was the youngest one, I didn't feel that my word had any value.
mm,
So coming from that trauma, coming from seeing so many untreated mental illnesses, starting with my own mother's mental illness and then the tragic death of my father, it was like a tornado and hurricane together of very confusing and very negative emotions and not knowing how am I going to grow out of this? How am I going to deal with this? How am I going to get help when at the first place where I had hardly any help was at home?
Mm.
So I fast forward all the way to not even being interested in being a mom, but God chose that for me.
Of course.
And I was like, yes,
Mm.
what am I going to do about it now? Yes, because it was exactly that. Being a mom is the best thing that ever happened in my life because otherwise I don't even think I would have been alive today
Mm.
if it was because I was such a troubled soul.
Yeah.
And when I had my kids, I understood that it wasn't only about me. It wasn't only about the pity party and feeling sorry for myself and blaming everybody for my sorrows and my mess ups. It's like, okay, I got to grow the F up
Yeah. Yeah.
with my kids and for them and with them,
Mm.
of course, because having kids is not only seeing them grow, but us growing
Of
with
course.
them. And it's a beautiful thing. But I was very troubled and I was fighting my own demons and my own darkness while raising children,
Mm.
while being in an abusive relationship. It was very, very hard, but it wasn't the most impossible task either because I
course.
went to school. I was raising two kids. I was, hey, taking care of a very ill man
Yeah.
as well, because when he was in his depressive mode that he wouldn't pay the bills, well, guess who was paying them?
Mm.
It was all on me.
Of course.
And I'm still here for a reason. And I think I cannot thank God enough. When I had my daughter, I saw it as a second chance to be even more of a better mother, to keep on improving myself as a human being, as an adult that I am supposed to be, rather than be behaving like a child
Yeah.
and keep on blaming people for my own actions. But God chose for me to be a mother after 30. I had my son at 32. I had my daughter at 35.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Everything like later. No, I'm happy about that.
Lot of fun years.
Oh my God. Yes. But yeah, after I had my daughter, that's when I said more growth is coming my way.
Mm.
And when she turned 2 years old at age 37, I moved to Florida. I went back to school and I said, I'm not looking back to where I was at. This isn't going to be only progress from here. Still, I was dealing with those very dark moments of abuse, of emotional abuse, because, you know, we tend to think what others say.
Mm-hmm.
And like Dr. Gabor Mate says,
Mm-hmm.
we are a product of our environment.
Mm-hmm.
And that really has stuck to me. It's like, wow, I'm a product of my environment. Hey, whoa,
Mm.
that is a heavy one.
Yeah.
Um, so I was at a doctor's office years ago with the kids, helping my ex because, he was a drug addict and he went into kidney failure.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, he went into kidney failure and he was in dialysis for the last 11 years of his life and he never learned the lesson. So seeing him and his demise at a young age, it's like, well, I either go down that drain with him or what am I going to do to get out? Because I got two other beings that depend on me to give them a healthy life,
Yeah.
healthier than what I have lived.
Of course.
So I was at this doctor office and the book, The Secret,
Mm.
was right there in front of me. And I picked it up and I was like, boy, do I have secrets of my own. And I opened that book. And after that book, I started reading from Carl Jung, from Bob Proctor, Marianne Williamson, Anthony Robbins. I took them all. And that was the first path to healing.
I love that.
To healing my broken heart, to healing my broken soul, and be a better individual, not only for myself, but for the ones that
Definitely.
depend on me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I believe that there's many different paths to healing. And
Mhm.
I do also believe that personal development can very well be a path. It was for me, at least. Someone had asked recently, I was on a podcast and someone had asked me, like, what was it that really helped heal a lot of my wounds? And I think they were expecting something deeply spiritual. And that just wasn't the
Mhm.
case for me. It was a long journey of learning and discovering a little bit more about how my mind works, about even how generational trauma works and all these things. And I know you mentioned a little bit about your childhood. And if you don't mind sharing just what that was like in those days in New York, because that was a completely different era in New York City. And I know New York City also had a lot of violence
Mhm.
during that time. I kind of experienced some of it. I mean, you're from a different generation, but I know I also experienced a lot of that violence in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. But what was life like for you in childhood?
Well, and when I was in New York, I was born there, and I was in Brooklyn
Mm,
until I was 7 years old.
mm,
What I hear now is that Brooklyn, where we used to live, it was South 5 Brooklyn.
mm,
That was the avenue. And what I hear now is that very hip chick place.
got it.
But before, it was no hip, no chick.
Hmm.
It was a dump.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And there was a lot of homelessness, a lot of drugs, a lot of troubled people. And basically, when I was in New York City, unless my mom took us out, we will never leave the apartment.
Mm,
We will never even go down the stairs. And my father owned the building where we were living,
mm.
and we were not even allowed to go down the stairs to play on the stairs.
Wow.
Yes. And it was very rough. Of course, the typical cliche of, oh, that you hear the shots
Mm,
out the window.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that absolutely happened. My father had a pawn shop and a jewelry store close to the house, and it wasn't. I mean, the environment. It looked dark.
Mm,
It looked in decay. It looked like an area in decay, and the buildings were falling apart. And my father was so smart back in those days to buy the building. I don't know, he got a very good deal, but he was the first one that will tell us, it's like, without your mother, you guys are not going from here to the corner.
mm,
So that's how my mother was really pretty paranoid about it. She never liked New York City. She never got used to it, unfortunately, but my father loved it. My
mm,
father, he was really living the American dream by the time of his death. And this is the thing. The saddest part of living in New York City is the memory of my father being killed
mm,
in his place of work, where he was being the family provider. And the one place where he was working so hard to provide for his family is when he gets his life taken. And that was just, a very, very dark season that lasted for a long time.
yeah.
And seeing how everything crumbled in front of everybody's eyes, see how my world crumbled in front of my eyes because my father was my person.
Mm-hmm.
I love my father more than I love my mother,
Mm-hmm.
at least at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, my father was the center of my world. And then boom, he was not there anymore.
Huh.
So definitely living in New York City, there was always good times because my mother made the best of it while my father was alive. But when we moved to Puerto Rico and then my father dies, it's like, okay, I don't want to know anything about New York City, but that's not true. I love New York
Yeah.
City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
No,
We grow. Yeah.
it's a love-hate
Oh
relationship.
my God. Yes.
And
Absolutely.
I myself went through 20 plus years of PTSD from New
Mhm.
York City, but it also was the very thing that molded my character. It brought so many incredible adventures and memories and so much love in the midst of all of the darkness.
Mhm.
And what was your father's name?
Raul.
Raul.
Hmm.
If you don't mind, just a little bit on his journey on how he even became this businessman in New York City
Oh my God.
from
Of
Puerto Rico.
course. Of
And
course.
we have to do him justice here.
Oh my God.
Just to honor him
Absolutely.
and
Oh,
his life,
absolutely.
because I'm sure if, and this is the human condition, unfortunately, that these very traumatic things that we go through, unfortunately, sometimes the beautiful things in our lives you can trace back to some of the darkest moments that
Hmm.
we went through. And the good thing is you can derive a sense of meaning from it. And I know if what had not happened, like or let's say things did not really go the way they did with your father, you'd be a completely different person today. So it's just this strange paradox, the way like life works. And but I would love it if you can just honor him by sharing a little bit about how he even became this businessman in New York City, and how he essentially brought up his family during that time.
Yes, absolutely. My father came from a middle class working family,
Mm.
and that was pretty higher end at
Mhm.
that time because there was a lot of extreme poverty. My mom comes from extreme poverty. My father really didn't. He came from a very loving family.
Mhm.
Mom and dad were there, very loving, 8 brothers and sisters. He went all the way to school. He went to college, but when he was accepted into the University of Puerto Rico, he told my grandfather, I want to be a lawyer.
Mhm.
But my father was a wild one. He was against, I mean, he was into politics. He was against the system back
Yeah,
in those days. And
he's a rebel.
his father said, oh yeah. And his father said, no, you're not gonna be a lawyer. And he's like, really? I won't be a lawyer. I'm leaving. So he enlisted in the military.
Mm.
Actually, he was in the Navy for 5 years and he was in the Army for 6 years. He traveled the world and then he went back to Puerto Rico and he went to the university to become a math teacher. Imagine that. So
Interesting.
he got his degree in mathematics and he became a teacher, but that wasn't enough for him.
Mm.
He met my mother, they get married, and then him and my beloved uncle, rest in peace as well, and a few friends. It was the Exodus at the end of the 50s, beginning of the 60s.
Mhm.
Big exodus of Puerto Ricans
My family
looking for
were
a
those
better
folks.
life
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
New York City.
Yep.
So he left with my uncle and they started, I mean, with very hard work and dedication, of course. I mean, he was living for the job,
Mhm.
literally.
Wow.
So they put a pawn shop, and the pawn shop started to get prosperous. My father put a jewelry store. Of course, it was in conjunction with
Of course.
with my uncle and his friends. And then after that, he bought them all out.
Wow.
Yes. He said, no, I want the business for me.
Wow.
And he bought them all out. And then after that, he bought the building where we were living at, a 4-story building in Brooklyn.
Mm.
And after that, well, his demise unfortunately came. And I was telling my daughter not long ago, it's like, do you know that if your grandfather stayed alive, he would have been a very wealthy
I can only.
man?
Yeah.
And she was like, Mom. I was like, I know, honey, but
Yeah.
while he was in this world, he really did wonderful things
Wow.
for himself and for his family. And he always sent money. He was a very giving human
Mm.
being. He always sent money from New York to Puerto Rico to his parents and for whoever needed it. I had 3 uncles on his side that they were with mental illnesses and he will pay for the hospital bills and everything. So he was a very, very
Wow.
giving, loving human being. God bless him. I
God
miss
bless him.
him.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Wow. I'm
I
so
love him
happy
so much.
you're able just to share a little
Oh,
bit of
God, yeah.
story lives on, especially through you. So how did life change for you when that tragic incident happened? How did things change during that time?
It was a very dark season because in Puerto Rican culture back in that day, it was about you don't talk about the dead.
Mm.
And oh, you don't talk about the dead. No hable de muerto. You don't talk about the dead because that can hurt people. No, it was the whole opposite. If we don't talk about the ones that we lost, it'll hurt us more.
Yeah.
So that trauma started right there. I remember in my father's funeral, I don't know who decided to make it at my grandparents' house. So that was like horrific because after his funeral and his viewing, every time I would go to my grandfather's house, I would see my father being in the casket
Oh wow.
because it was in the living room where they
Mhm.
put his casket, and it was like this ocean of people and confusion, and then there was this my aunt that she was not well. Obviously, nobody was well because it was so tragic. and he was taken, he was 43 years old when his life was taken. There was people that, I mean, my aunt, she was looking for the bullet holes of where were they? Where's the holes?
Wow.
And I was standing right there. I'm like, oh my God, am I even supposed to be listening to this?
Wow.
So it was a very traumatic. Oh my God, PTSD galore.
Yeah.
I had PTSD with guns for a very, very, very long time. My husband has a gun now, and I'm very comfortable with it. So it's like, oh, thank you, God. This is progress.
Yeah.
Just because somebody has a gun, it doesn't mean
Of
they're
course.
gonna end up like my father. But
Yeah.
that was for a very long time. Um, with this trauma. And when childhood trauma is not treated, is not approached, is not worked on, it's going to be following us for the rest of our lives until we finally face the music and understand that we have no control of it,
Yeah.
control over
Yeah.
it. It just happened that way,
Yeah.
and take it as a lesson and understand that just because my father's demise was like that, it has nothing to do with the way I'm going to be living my life.
Of
Like I was
course.
telling my sister and not loud, was like, just because you've heard of all these plans that they had and it just didn't happen because his life ended so abruptly, it doesn't mean that's gonna be
Of
your
course.
destiny as well.
Yeah.
Because every single life is a different story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have learned a lot along the way. But yes, it was a very long years of trauma and being lost.
Interesting.
Lost,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. I can only imagine. And I can relate to a certain degree. My father also passed away at 43 years old. And I know the effect that an absent father can have
Mhm.
on your life. And how would you say the absence of that masculine role in the household, or the absence of just your father and having to deal with the knowing that he's no longer with you, how did it pretty much manifest itself later on in life? Because they say, the word trauma is, originally comes from wound or wounding. It's the original meaning of the word. And typically the way it works, it's, as you know, mental or emotional wounds that many times they don't go through that healing that they need. And then years later, you get triggered by certain things. And there's another saying in the world of trauma that if you don't heal from those who've cut you, you'll bleed on those who don't. So it sort of manifests itself in a lot of different ways, typically in relationships down the road. How would you say that pretty much affected you later on?
It really manifested on relationships down the road, especially when it came to a partner. It was full of violence.
Mm,
Yes, my father had a violent death, and many things, years later, well, recently, because to a lot of people like myself, it takes a lifetime
hmm.
to heal,
Yeah.
finally heal, and keep on healing because the healing never ends. This is a in the midst of having a lifelong pattern of abuse, neglect, abandonment. I neglected myself. I abandoned myself. I was sexually assaulted. So I'm a sexual violence survivor as well. Since a very, very young age, my father died when I was 8 years old. So when I was 9 years old, a year later, I was sexually assaulted for a first time.
Wow.
So that was a moment that really took me down that rabbit hole of loneliness, of no self-respect, low self-esteem. And with my father's death, that was a violent death. And then being sexually assaulted violently
Mm,
as well by a drug addict, by the way, that really defined how my relationships with partners were. And I was always attracted to the bad boy.
mm,
Oh, the bad boy. Oh, that is so sexy. Oh, that's so attractive. Oh, wow, that's hot.
yeah,
Yeah, I was just looking at my own mirror
for sure.
with my relationships of that nature until, my path to growth really started kicking in and I really started to put the work,
Hmm.
full blown, go to that dark moment,
Hmm.
cry it out, sob, let it be, scream.
Yeah.
And until I came out to the other side, I didn't have any comprehension of what a healthy relationship with a man was
Yeah.
until I met my now husband.
Wow.
When I started to really do the healing, I don't know, I think it was a book from Carl Jung that asks, list 10 things of what you want in that special person.
Mhm.
I was like, wow, that is a hard one. Imagine that. That is a hard one.
Mhm.
My own words, I was like, that is a hard one. And it's like, oh, man,
Mhm.
what am I saying is hard? Because it really was hard.
Mhm.
Why? Because I didn't think I deserved
Yeah.
a good person in my life.
Mhm.
So I said, okay, I'm going to be brave and I'm going to write it down. Well, I wrote down 10 very special things that I was looking for in this special human being. This special human being didn't have a face, didn't have a body. It's like, I don't know who it is, but it'll happen.
Mhm.
2 months later, I meet my now husband.
Wow.
2 months later, and I met him while I was serving tables at a restaurant because I was about to graduate from massage therapy school.
Mm.
And I was like, I need a part-time or something because I cannot be depending on my ex-partner for anything.
Of course.
Yeah. And then after that, we developed a very good relationship, which was totally new in my life.
Mm.
Because when before I would define a relationship by sex.
Mm.
Oh, that was so hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. That was great. I'm in love. No,
Yeah.
no, I was really, really in a very wrong place. And I didn't have the full definition of really loving a partner and a partner loving me back was
Of course.
until, here we go, later on in life. I married my husband at 48 years old. That's when I found my partner, my best friend, the one person that I can just sit down and have a conversation with. We never run out of conversations.
Mm.
We're always there for each other. And he says that I am his biggest investment. So that's great. I really love that.
Love it. Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. When you mention just being drawn to the bad boy,
Mhm.
and you and I have spoken a lot about basic human needs psychology and just essentially people wanting those basic needs met, and sometimes we'll seek those needs and we'll have those needs met even if it's something that contradicts everything that we stand for.
Mhm.
And I know one of the signs of trauma is people who go through a lot of trauma tend to end up taking on a lot of toxic tendencies. And sometimes, even if you've been in a matter of survival, or maybe you were neglected from the attention that you needed as a child, you'll naturally want to seek it in other people. And
Mhm.
you'll want that adrenaline rush to feel alive, to get that sense of variety, to get that
Yeah.
sense of, it's like certainty that you're going to get that attention, that
Mhm.
it's going to be spicy, that, you know, you're going to have those needs essentially met. What do you think it was for you that lure to these toxic situations in your past relationships?
Definitely the variety.
Yeah.
The variety
Mm.
and the certainty that I will have like, well, this heat and wow, and the rush. I
Yeah.
was looking for that eternal rush of dopamine,
Yep.
but in the worst possible way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That was the eternal rush of dopamine that I was looking for and looking for. And that, at the end of the day, I felt the same emptiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The same
It
emptiness.
doesn't last. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I always say it's like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound.
Mhm.
And at some point in time, it's just not going to work. The Band-Aid will naturally just come off and the wound will still be there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, you have two phenomenal children, and I know a little bit about the both of them, and you're an incredible mother.
Thank you.
And it's really like, I think if people truly knew how you are as a mom and just the success I would say that you've had with your children, they're just beautiful people.
Yeah.
You raised beautiful people in spite of what they went through and endured with their father. And your daughter just graduated, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
from the university,
Yeah, she's from Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like now living in Minnesota?
No, she
Or
lives in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin,
My son
Wisconsin.
too. Both of them
That's
are
right,
in
yeah.
Wisconsin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So now they're both in Wisconsin,
Mhm.
and it's amazing. See, I know you just came from a festival with your daughter, hanging
Yes.
out with her friends.
Yeah.
So you have this beautiful dynamic with
Mhm.
your children, which is incredible. And what would you say if in terms of advice for the mom who's currently a single mom, and maybe she's in the situation you were in many years ago, and perhaps she's in this really toxic relationship, or she's as you know, we oftentimes talk about the crazy eight pattern that you
Mhm.
fall into, where on one side of the spectrum, you're in this rage and you're always just angry, and it's spicy and fiery, and you get that variety, you get that dopamine hit. But then when it fades away, which oftentimes it does, you go into a deep sadness and depression. And I think a lot of women can relate to that, especially women who've gone through sexual abuse and just traumatic situations. What advice would you give to the women out there who just genuinely want to raise good children in spite of everything that they have going on, and maybe from an absent father as well?
I would say to all of them, don't believe everything your partner is telling you
Mm,
because it's not true. It's just a reflection of their own sadness and darkness. And many people that go through these abusive relationships, I was in a few of them before the father of my children, they all wanted power.
mm,
And when they are with a powerful woman like all of us, they get intimidated. And we are intimidating to them. And that's why it's a vicious circle, the crazy eight, definitely, of us being powerful women. And then when this person, this abuser, sees the power within us, they want to shut us down.
mhm,
It's like we're here, we're a powerful source, and then they come and no, I'm not going to let you be that powerful because I know you are that powerful, but I don't like it because then I won't be the most important person in the room
mhm,
because it's all about themselves.
of course.
Abusers are all about themselves. They have this narcissistic mindset,
Mhm,
unfortunately for them, because that's a very sad life to live,
yeah.
actually. And what I would say to all of these powerful women, don't underestimate who you are.
Mhm,
And if this person is trying to put you down, it's because you can step into your power.
mhm,
And the mind plays a lot of tricks on us, a lot of dirty tricks on us. And really, don't believe everything that people say to you because ultimately, you can really prove to yourself that it's not true. When I walk out, well, I didn't walk out, I run out from my abusive relationship. It got to the point that he was being really verbally abusive to my own children. And I said, no more.
mm,
I had $89 in my purse, a crappy ass car that was falling into pieces. And I said to myself, I'd rather sleep under a bridge than be with this person one more minute of my life.
wow.
And help came. And a friend of mine, she said, no, you're not doing this alone. And she comes from divorce herself,
Wow.
from abusive man. She said, no, you're not doing this on your own. So I ended up never being under a bridge, thank God. And I stayed with a friend for like a month. And thank goodness I had jobs. And I said, you know what? I'd rather live in a studio with my two kids
Yeah.
than be with this person because it never served me any good. Yes, afterwards, there is lessons.
Yeah.
Oh my God, lessons of growth.
Mhm,
But while that was happening, angels just in the form of humans came to my aid. I was a professional dancer. I was doing Zumba classes to 55 plus communities. And somehow somebody found out that I was going through the situation. It was Christmas time 2011. Thank you, God, for Christmas time 2011. And all of these people came, and this lady gave me a bag, and she's like, this is your Christmas gift. Please guard it with your life because there's a lot of cards for you there.
mm,
Well, it was $1,500 later of cards
wow. Wow.
and help that came my way, and in the form of human beings. And whoever is going through the situation, there is help out there.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe how God works in these mysterious ways that when you step into that power,
Mm,
you say, no more of this crap. I'm getting out and this is for real.
yeah.
Oh my God. So many other doors open
Of
up.
course.
And And with my kids, they were my biggest inspiration to get out of that.
Mhm.
It's like, no, we're not gonna, I'm not gonna be drowning
Yeah.
in this cup of water,
Yeah.
because I was drowning in a cup of water
Mm.
I mean, in the long run, of course, I found that out,
Yeah.
and I'm very grateful about it. But for those two kids, I said, well, I'm going to do it for me
Mm.
in this order,
Yeah.
for me and those two.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will take
Absolutely.
it from there to this day. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. It reminds me, I've been studying a lot of Carl Jung's work, as I told you, and he talks a lot about synchronicities. And in that moment, like you said, there were these earthly angels in a sense that just came out of nowhere. And I think when we ultimately come to a decision, and as you know, the word decide means to cut off or kill off, right?
Mm-hmm.
You think homicide, genocide, suicide, these words mean to kill off. And when you make that decision and kill off any other possibility, I feel like that's when you get those whispers on the wind. You get that universal grace in a sense. And it's not something that is necessarily earned. I think just God knows when you've had enough, and he wants to help us in a sense. And
Mm-hmm.
it comes in the form of grace. It comes in the form of certain people who will come out the woodworks. And I think it is important to put your trust in that when it comes to making a decision, because many women out there are basically feeling like they're stuck in that situation and they're very scared,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that they're going to have to do it alone. And sometimes you have to take that leap of faith and put your trust in something bigger, that there is this thing called grace that will fall upon you the moment you make that decision.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And you spoke a little bit about the idea of narcissism, which also is a toxic tendency. It's comes from people who were deeply wounded. Usually for men, it sort of manifests itself in terms of narcissism, that feeling of not feeling like you're enough.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really trace back the human condition, a lot of it stems from, a lot of our human behavior comes from just not feeling like we're enough. And whether it was abandonment or neglect, there were a lot of things that even led to your children's father being the way that he was. And
Oh, yeah.
we spoke about your father's journey, obviously, and I got to do your children's father, God bless his soul as well,
Absolutely.
justice, because he also is a big reason why you are where you are today and why you have two wonderful kids. So it's not something that you want to necessarily condemn. It's not to demonize him or anything, because he was also once a little precious baby boy
Absolutely.
that unfortunately the world didn't take care of him the
Mm-hmm.
way that he needed to be taken care of. If you don't mind sharing a little bit about what you feel led to him being the way that, he was, and also some of the demons that he had to face in his lifetime.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for that, because he deserves to be honored
Of
as
course.
well. After I left him, I decided that, and it was God's plan for me as well, I mean, the power of forgiveness is really, really infinite.
Mm.
And if I didn't forgive him, I wouldn't be able to move on with my life, to have a healthier relationship with my now husband. My ex comes from a lot of abuse. He was sexually abused as a child
Wow.
as well. There was a lot of very troubled souls. He comes from a father that was an alcoholic, a chronic alcoholic, a physical abuser, domestic abuse, 12 brothers and sisters. They were they were in the same house,
Wow.
all of them crumpled up, living together, sleeping together, and there was a lot of abuse sexually
Yeah.
in his household, meaning incest, and yes, and he never recovered from that. And the reason why he became an abuser himself is because he was a very, very wounded man, and the reason why we connected and clashed so much, it was because we were mirroring each other.
Yeah.
We were mirroring each other. He was an abuse human being. I was abused myself. He was victim of sexual abuse since he was 6 years old, he told me. And I was abused as well as a child. And we were mirroring each other a lot. And then after I left him, I decided, I said, I'm going to be your friend,
Mhm.
because we were destined to be friends. Probably be the parents of the same kids, but let's just be friends. And, you know, before his death, he found the power of forgiveness within himself and he asked for forgiveness to a lot of people. And I told him I was his friend till the end. And I'm grateful,
Yeah.
forever grateful, because that brought me a lot of peace.
Yeah.
So he was not a bad person. He was funny. He was talented. He was a great cook. He was a beautiful man physically. He had all of these gifts that he could have used, but just he
Yeah.
chose not to, unfortunately. But I cannot be more grateful to him for being in Florida.
Mm.
I am grateful to him for my kids. I am grateful to him for the lessons I learned about myself through his neglect of himself.
Yeah.
That is for sure. Because he chose to live a life of neglect and drug abuse and numbing the pain and running away versus facing it and finding peace somehow and acceptance. And thanks to him, in many ways, I found, more enlightenment
Yeah.
than he ever did. But I'm very thankful that I was there for him until the last day of his life.
Mm.
I was already in a relationship with my husband, and my husband is such a wonderful human being that I told him, listen, he has nobody. He's like a stray dog, this
Mm.
poor man.
Yeah.
And he was, you could see he died at 48, but he looked older than my own mother.
Mm.
And my mom is 92.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the level of deterioration that he was having from the inside out.
Wow.
This was a body that was falling into pieces
Yeah.
because he chose that path for himself, unfortunately. And when the last week of his life, he said, I'm not feeling well and I think I'm gonna die. And I told him, you need to go say I love you to as many people you can.
Mm.
And whoever you need forgiveness from, go say I'm sorry and mean it from the heart. And 6 days later, he died. Mother's Day,
Wow.
2013.
Wow.
Yeah, Mother's Day 2013. And the thing that I'm so grateful of is that I stayed by his side all the way to the day of his death.
God bless him. Yeah.
Yeah.
God bless his
Yeah.
soul.
And
Mhm.
my husband, he's amazing because he told me one thing. He was in the hospital. And one of the things that I prayed with passion, I was like, God, don't let this man die in my house with my children in the house.
Mhm.
And God was so good to me that he went to the hospital and he died in the hospital. But when we went to say our goodbyes, my husband told me, you need to take your kids with you and they need to say their goodbyes and they need to exercise some forgiveness because he was very abusive with them too, especially my son.
Yeah.
And there we went.
Mhm.
And my son, he was in his deathbed with all those tubes in him. And my son went and he said, Dad, I forgive you. And it was like a
Wow.
ton of weight that it just dissipated in that ICU room from my son's shoulders. And Steve, he was the one that told me you need to take your kids
Wow.
and say their goodbyes and exercise forgiveness somehow.
Wow.
So yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Super
Beautiful
system
story.
is
Yeah.
so important with, these situations. And I'm very grateful for Edwin. That was his name. I'm very grateful for him and God bless his soul. And I really hope that he found his peace
Absolutely.
in his last days
Yeah.
of his life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful story. I appreciate you
Oh,
sharing that and the
yeah.
vulnerability of
Of
that.
course. Oh my
And to
God. Yeah.
also not let his suffering go to waste
No, not at all.
because he also has a story
Mm.
and the world was a bit cruel to him,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
And I do hope he is in a better place, and,
Yeah.
and
I he
believe
is.
so. I
Yeah.
believe so, definitely. I always mention to a lot of people how forgiveness is a big part of the healing process.
Mhm.
You have to extend that sense of forgiveness. And I went through my own journey of forgiveness because my biological father, for example, I never knew that I had daddy issues in a sense. Even though I had a stepfather
Mhm.
who was present, there was still this feeling of not being enough. And my siblings, they all had their dad, their biological dad, and I always just wanted to fit in that sense. And
Mhm.
it manifested itself in a lot of different ways, but having a better understanding of how these generational cycles work and basically, and that's why I love Dr. Gabor Mate's work
Mm.
for that very reason, because he talks about some of the systemic issues that ultimately lead to this trauma and these generational cycles. And you and I have spoken, we won't get too in depth with it or anything, but that also had an effect on your children as well.
Absolutely.
And which was obvious. It was inevitable that that would have an effect on them as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and then now
Mhm.
it's beautiful that you're on this path also of being even a holistic life coach and the work that you share on trauma and helping your children sort of integrate this forgiveness, this healing, this sense of sort of finding their way based off of everything that you've gone through. We spoke about also the archetype of the wounded healer,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I feel like this is a great way to sort of bring this beautiful interview for a landing in terms of this next chapter of your life, because you and I spoke also a lot about you transitioning from working with your physical hands to now also working with your mind, working with your words. And I'm really excited for you embarking on this new journey
Thank you.
for so many reasons.
Mhm.
And it's beautiful also because you get to take a lot of your experience from your woundings and also the knowledge that you've gained. And you sort of gone through this cycle, this hero's journey, if you will, and found your way, right, to a beautiful marriage now. And, you know, you have a great career and all of these different things. And now you're speaking and sharing your story
Yeah.
with passing the torch on to the next generation, your children. What would you say is the best thing to do to help your children even with their healing journey, for the mom who perhaps raised her children fatherless or vice versa, right? Or maybe their children experienced some things traumatic, whether it be incest or something of that nature.
Mhm.
What is your approach to it now? Just helping them just kind of make that full circle and come to a sense of completion in themselves.
Well, as a mother of adult kids now, my son is 25 and my daughter is 22. They have their own independent lives now. The biggest thing that I consider as a mother, it doesn't matter which age they are. As parents, we have this little window for them to really pay attention without feeling that they're nagged
Hmm.
by their mother. Because, oh, mom, you're being nagging. Oh my God, I have heard
Yeah.
that since the teenage years. I've been nagging them. No, I've been nagging them since they were little kids, but that's another story for another day. But with them, I love to communicate with them from the most honest place there can be.
Mhm.
What I have told you, I openly talk to them about it.
Mm.
If they're willing to listen, because if they're not willing to listen, it becomes an uncomfortable situation, and then the distancing
Of course.
can happen, and that I won't never allow to happen. It's like, are you comfortable with this?
Mhm.
Because I take under consideration that they're individuals. They are
Of
living their
course.
own lives. And I always have wanted for them to make their own decisions, even if I consider as a parent that they may not be the best ones, but is my obligation as a human, as a parent, to let them be, because we all make mistakes. We all fall on our butts. We all get up, and the most important part is that you fall down, you're gonna get them back up,
Absolutely.
and you're gonna move on. And if you need help, I am here. But I can only coach my kids to a very, this window of opportunity
Yeah.
I have. And I don't take it for granted. I don't take it lightly. I was at the music festival with my daughter
Mhm.
that night, and my mom is 92. My mom is, you know, she's beginning to transition, and grandma has been always very important to my kids. Well, I told my daughter, listen, you really need to do this, this, and that. The decision is yours. I make sure to say the decision is yours because I don't want them to feel it's like my mom is telling me what to do.
Of
Oh,
course.
well, and no, that's not really the idea. So the more open communication as parents that we have with our kids, the better. Make sure that you understand of a parent that as a parent that you have a very small window of opportunity before you enter into nagging, and be aware that they're very smart, intelligent grown-ups
Yeah.
because my kids are grown-ups. And as much as I would love them to learn from me, as much I love to learn from them and be a listening parent because in my childhood, really nobody listened to me.
Yeah.
Really, I was the nagging child.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're so annoying, you're so nosy, you're so presentada, and all that stuff. It's like, no, I was just curious and wanting to learn.
Yeah.
But with my kids specifically, my relationship with my kids, grow with them.
Mm. Yeah.
Grow with them, learn from them. Oh,
Love it.
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it's progress, and they feel loved.
Of course.
And they feel like they mean a lot to you. It's like, wow, my parent is looking up to me.
Yeah.
Is coming to me for
Yeah.
advice. And I do with both my kids.
Absolutely.
And they love it because my kids come from trauma as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my daughter has clinical depression,
Mm-hmm.
and my son has general anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
He's allergic to people. He
Yeah.
doesn't like crowds.
Mm-hmm.
But I make sure to say, it's like, you're not alone.
Of course.
Here's the tools
Yeah.
that you can use. Pick the tools up
Mm-hmm.
or don't pick it up, but it's your choice, it's your decision.
Absolutely.
There's only so many times that us as parents can repeat something to our kids
Very true.
before them go turning around and doing exactly the opposite of what you advise them to do. So
Yeah.
watch out, please, as parents, watch out with your words and with the repetition. I know the repetition is a mother of all skill,
Mm.
but as a parent, you got to be very
Yeah.
picky what you're going to pick and choose to repeat to your kids before they turn their backs and go and do the whole opposite.
So true.
So that's
Yeah.
my biggest.
Yeah, I love
yeah.
that. I love that. And on the topic even of forgiveness, I think it's so important not only to forgive other people, but also forgive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay if you weren't the best mom because you were just dealing the cards that you were dealt with, in a sense. You were working with the cards that you were dealt with. And you also were just doing the best that you could based on where you were. And
Yeah.
the path to healing is not about just pointing the finger at someone else, or even it's not even, you have to be careful too, because you can sort of beat up on yourself, and at a subconscious level you're doing it for significance.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's about taking ownership that this is where I was.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I could do about it.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I was the way that I was. And like you said, let's grow together.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move beyond this. I'm sorry, right? Being genuinely apologetic about what transpired, but at the same time, just not beating up on yourself and not feeling guilty. And it's okay to forgive yourself and know that, hey, you were just doing the best that you could based on where you were.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you've gone through some things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot agree with you more with my kids when I finally, I have said over the years, my apologies, but the last one lately that I said to them was, I think, the most profound one, because before I said this apology to them, I took care of looking at myself in that mirror. Oh, how scary mirrors can be,
Mhm.
especially for wounded people.
Yeah.
I was scared of the mirror for almost all of my life. And it's so ironic because I was a dancer for so many years. And all I liked in the mirror was looking at myself dancing.
Yeah.
It never went further than that until recent years that I started to do this exercise. Thank you, Lisa Nichols, for that. Of Blanca, I forgive you for being inappropriate. I forgive you for not being the best mother. I forgive you for doing the best you could with the little tools you had. I forgive you for messing it up. I forgive you for not respecting yourself and your body.
Mm.
And then after that, after I internalize it, after I look at the mirror and I say, Coño, chica, you look really good now.
Mhm.
Blanca, I love you. You're a badass
I
lady.
love it.
Yeah, yeah. Then after that, I went in during the holiday last year that I saw my daughter and I saw my son, both of them separately. I said my apologies. I said my apologies, and it was with these words: I am so sorry for not being the best mom. I was dealing with my own sorrows and demons, and you had nothing to do with it. You brought life to my life. I mean, you brought love and life to my soul. And they totally got it.
Love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and as we, as they have kept on growing, I have kept on talking, having these difficult conversations with them more openly. There's a moment in life to do everything, and as parents, this gut instinct will never lie to us. It's that this is the moment to say something.
Of course.
Don't waste time. Don't wait.
Yeah.
And I did that with my son, and it's like, son,
That's
especially him,
that's
because he was
yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
abused by his father. Especially him. And I said, son, I apologize for not looking after you, for not defending you more, because I was defenseless.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was defenseless,
Wow.
and I had nothing within me to defend you from the situation because I was dealing with my own demons. I was mirroring your father more than I thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's been very enlightening
Yeah.
and a growth experience for us, and I'm very happy. I cannot wait for the rest.
Incredible.
What's coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the
Of course.
openness and the
Of course.
authenticity. And wow. So we've covered so much, Blanca. And I want to close off by just talking about what's next. So you're in this interesting transition where you've been a healer in many different forms, in a sense, and now you're doing it with your mind, with your words. You're a speaker for Toastmasters International, and you're going through that program, which is incredible. And it's been amazing seeing you blossom in that.
Thank you.
And also just being featured on podcasts and writing books now about your incredible story. What are you excited for next on this next chapter of Blanca?
With the grace of God, becoming the professional speaker that, thanks to this book, becoming help more people with their trauma through holistic life coaching.
Mhm.
And thank you for your teachings because they are really, really powerful. Whoever wants to be a holistic life coach, this is the person to contact, please.
Appreciate it.
This is really, really powerful. It is a learning experience, not only to practice as a life coach, but going around being a life coach and learning that in order to be a life coach, I got to coach myself as well
That's right.
and learn from it. Because if I don't practice what I preach, it's not real.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest part. But I am looking forward to speaking to the masses, educating people, helping people get their quality of life in a better place, because there's always room for improvement. And it's not about perfection, it's about progress.
Yeah.
And everything in life is about progress and growing, and never stop learning, never stop growing, never stop looking for that new start, no matter what age we are. So that is definitely where I'm heading to.
I love that.
Hi, I'm so excited.
I love
Oh,
that,
yeah.
Blanca. And if there were any departing words, let's just say, God forbid, this was your very last day on earth and you had to leave a message to the people, what would that be?
Don't let your past define you. Live it to the max. Close your eyes and jump.
I love it.
And love unconditionally. Love like a dog. Unconditionally.
I
Yeah.
love it. Love like a dog. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And it's so ironic that the word dog is God
Yeah.
in reverse.
And God made a dog.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much, Blanca.
Oh, thank
Where
you.
can the people find you? Where can they purchase your book?
My book is in Amazon Kindle and in paperback, and I have a humble website called the Mental Health Concierge.net. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads. I have a Facebook page called the Holistic Concierge. So hey, you can reach me there. Oh, and in Instagram, Coach Blanca E.
Love it. Love it.
That.
Thank you so much, Blanca.
Oh,
Once
thank
again,
you.
I appreciate you. It's been beautiful, beautiful. So For those of you who are tuning in, I mean, if this was a blessing for you, like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. It most certainly helps get this message out to those who are in need. And stay tuned for future podcast episodes where we will be capturing more inspiring stories like this. Take care, God bless, and we'll be seeing you soon.
Thanks again for tuning into this episode. It would mean the world to me if you can follow, subscribe, share, or even leave a review. I look forward to putting out more content, and we'll see you on another episode.